When Daniel Reeves walked into the marble-floored lobby of the Grand Crest Hotel, no one could have guessed that the man in the modest grey uniform was actually the billionaire owner of the entire luxury chain. Disguised as a mid-level maintenance worker for the network's reality show Undercover Boss, Daniel wanted to experience the real treatment his employees faced. His assistant manager had insisted that the Grand Crest flagship property was the crown jewel of their empire, but Daniel had a gut feeling something was off. From the moment he walked in, the front desk barely glanced at him. The bellboys ignored his greeting. The air, though scented with jasmine, carried a quiet arrogance that unsettled him. He took a deep breath, straightened his name tag reading Dave, and prepared to face a week that would change everything. His first assignment was to fix a faulty faucet in one of the VIP suites. The supervisor, a tall man named Gregory, barked orders at him without eye contact. "Don't scratch the marble," he warned with a smirk. "Last guy who did lost his bonus." Daniel nodded, forcing a smile. Inside, he watched the staff moving about, some genuinely trying, others faking politeness when guests were near. When the camera crew filming his training left the room, Gregory's tone turned venomous. "You're slow, old man," he sneered. "You'll never last a week here." Daniel wanted to respond, but he bit his tongue. He was there to observe, not expose himself. Still, a pang of anger burned in his chest. He couldn't believe that such disrespect was normal in his own establishment. During lunch, he sat with the housekeeping staff in the employee cafeteria. The food was meager compared to the lavish buffets offered upstairs. A young maid named Clara whispered to him, "Don't talk much, or management will cut your hours." Daniel listened as she described 12-hour shifts, unpaid overtime, and constant verbal abuse. She smiled faintly, her eyes tired but kind. "I just need this job," she said softly. Her words struck Daniel harder than any insult. He realized his company had turned into a place where profit mattered more than people. He had always believed in luxury with compassion, but clearly the soul of Grand Crest was fading. That night he couldn't sleep. The echoes of Clara's voice haunted him. The next morning, the general manager, Mr. Langston, conducted an inspection. Daniel overheard him berating a front desk trainee for offering a smile to a guest without approval. "We're not here to be friends," Langston hissed. "We're here to make money." Daniel clenched his fists behind his back. The arrogance, the cruelty. It was everything he had feared. When Langston noticed Dave, he sneered. "Ah, the new maintenance boy. Try not to break anything. We can't afford another disaster." Daniel nodded silently, swallowing his pride. Every second spent in disguise showed him how deep the rot had spread through his empire. The show's producers wanted drama. Daniel was getting heartbreak instead. Later that day, Gregory sent Daniel to clean a clogged drain in the executive spa. It was grueling work, but Daniel didn't mind. What shook him was seeing employees mocked by guests and ignored by management. When a guest accidentally spilled wine on the carpet, a young cleaner rushed to fix it, only for the guest to insult her accent. Langston stood nearby, laughing. Daniel felt his jaw tighten. For the first time, he thought about abandoning the disguise right then. But he needed more proof. He needed to see just how broken his beloved Grand Crest had become. He made a silent promise to himself. When the truth came out, no one would ever forget what he did next. On the third day, Daniel witnessed something that nearly made him reveal his identity. Clara was cleaning a penthouse suite when Gregory entered without knocking. He criticized her for taking too long and threw a towel at her feet. "Pick it up faster," he barked. Daniel, watching from the hallway, froze. The humiliation was unbearable to watch. Clara's eyes glistened, but she kept silent. When Gregory left, Daniel approached her. "You don't deserve that," he whispered. She gave him a sad smile. "It's fine, Dave. This is just how it is here." Those words broke him. That night, Daniel sat in his tiny staff dorm room, writing down every injustice he had witnessed. He wasn't just going to fire a few people, he was going to rebuild everything. The next morning, Langston announced that the owner himself would visit the hotel next week for an unannounced inspection. The staff panicked, rushing to polish surfaces and rehearse fake smiles. Daniel hid his grin. They had no idea the boss was already among them. Watching them scramble, he realized how fear-driven the culture had become. People didn't work for pride or joy. They worked to avoid punishment. He felt a strange mix of sadness and determination. He had built an empire of fear without ever knowing it. Now he was going to fix it. But first, they'd all have to show their true colors. By the end of the week, Daniel had gathered enough footage and personal notes to expose what was happening. But something unexpected occurred. Gregory called him into the manager's office. "Dave," he said with fake sympathy, "you're being let go. You're too slow and too soft." "This isn't a charity." Daniel stared at him in disbelief. "Fired from his own company." He almost laughed. "Thank you," Daniel replied calmly. Gregory smirked, thinking he had humiliated a powerless worker. As Daniel walked out, he could hear the others whispering. Clara's eyes were red from crying. "You didn't deserve this," she said. Daniel smiled gently. "Don't worry. Things are about to change." A week later, the real Daniel Reeves, clean-shaven, wearing his signature Navy suit, walked into the Grand Crest lobby, flanked by TV cameras and executives. The same staff who had ignored him before now rushed to greet him. Langston's face turned pale. Gregory froze mid-step. Daniel didn't say a word at first. He simply looked around, letting the silence speak. Then he said, "I've seen how my people are treated here, and I'm ashamed." The room went dead silent. Cameras captured every twitch of guilt and fear. The same walls that had once echoed arrogance now seemed to shrink under his gaze. Langston stammered, "Sir, if there's been a misunderstanding—" Daniel cut him off. "The misunderstanding," he said firmly, "was believing this hotel represented luxury. What I saw was cruelty, manipulation, and greed. That ends today." Gregory looked like he wanted to vanish. Clara, standing at the back, covered her mouth in shock. Daniel turned to her. "Clara, come here." She hesitated, then stepped forward. "You showed kindness when no one else did," he said. "From today, you're being promoted to assistant manager." The entire staff gasped. Clara's hands trembled. "Sir, I don't know what to say." Daniel smiled. "You already said everything through your actions." As the shock settled across the lobby, Daniel turned toward the stunned management team. "Gregory," he said coldly, "you fired me last week, remember? You told me I was too slow for this hotel. Well, I've decided to take your advice. You're the one who's done here." Gregory's face drained of color. The cameras zoomed in, catching every bead of sweat on his forehead. He stuttered, "Sir, I didn't know—" But Daniel raised a hand. "You didn't have to know who I was to treat people decently." "That's the whole point." Gasps filled the room. The staff exchanged glances, some hiding smiles behind their hands. For the first time in years, they were seeing justice inside these walls. Gregory muttered something about unfairness before security quietly escorted him out. Daniel didn't look away once. Langston, the general manager, tried to salvage his position. "Mr. Reeves, we've always upheld your vision of excellence," he began, his voice trembling slightly. Daniel's eyes narrowed. "Excellence?" he repeated. "You call 12-hour shifts without pay, humiliation of staff, and fear-based leadership excellence?" Langston faltered, sweat glistening on his temple. I wasn't aware." Daniel stepped closer. "You were aware. You built it." The weight of his words hit like a hammer. Langston knew there was no escape. For years, he had shaped Grand Crest into a machine that crushed its workers for profit, and now that machine had turned against him. Daniel sighed. "You're done, Langston." Effective immediately. A hush fell over the crowd as the man who once ruled the hotel walked out, head down, stripped of power and pride. After the confrontation, Daniel called an emergency staff meeting in the grand ballroom. Everyone gathered, servers, cleaners, front desk agents, cooks, and security guards. The atmosphere buzzed with fear and hope. Daniel stood before them, no longer the mysterious worker they had mocked, but the founder of everything around them. "I started Grand Crest with a dream," he said, his voice steady but emotional. "A dream to build a place where people could work with pride and guests could feel warmth, not just wealth. But somewhere along the way, we lost our heart." Eyes around the room glistened with emotion. "That ends today," he continued. "From now on, Grand Crest will be known not just for luxury, but for dignity." The next few days turned the hotel upside down. Daniel stayed on site, overseeing every department personally. He reinstated fair wages, paid back lost overtime, and opened a confidential channel for employees to report abuse. He walked the halls, speaking to everyone, listening to stories of struggle and resilience. Some staff were wary, unsure if this sudden kindness was real. But when Clara approached him hesitantly about better training for cleaners, Daniel didn't just agree, he implemented it within 24 hours. "We'll make sure everyone grows here," he told her. "No one should feel trapped in their job." The sincerity in his voice melted away years of distrust. Slowly, the staff began to believe again. A week later, national headlines exploded. Undercover boss exposes toxic luxury hotel culture. Videos of Daniel's confrontation with Langston and Gregory went viral, drawing millions of views. Social media flooded with praise for his courage and condemnation for the mistreatment revealed on camera. Guests began calling to commend him, saying they finally trusted Grandcrest again. But Daniel wasn't chasing headlines. He spent most of his time with the staff, eating in the same cafeteria, shaking hands, asking names. "The cameras may have caught the drama," he told one reporter, "but the real story is the people who kept working even when the world ignored them." Clara, now in her new role, was struggling to adjust. She confessed to Daniel one afternoon, "I'm scared I'm not good enough." He smiled. "That's exactly what makes you the right person. You care." Her humility reminded him of what leadership truly meant. Together, they designed a mentorship program for young employees, giving them pathways to advance rather than remain invisible. "Kindness doesn't cost profit," Daniel said in an internal meeting. "In fact, it's the best investment we can make." The staff began to walk taller, speak with confidence, and smile genuinely. The transformation was slow but visible. Grandcrest was healing. Months passed, and the results spoke for themselves. Employee turnover dropped dramatically. Guest satisfaction soared. For the first time, staff voluntarily referred friends to work there. The hotel's once cold atmosphere now radiated warmth. Journalists called it the Grandcrest miracle, but Daniel didn't stop there. He extended the reforms to every property in the chain, mandating empathy training for all management and instituting anonymous feedback channels directly to his office. Some executives protested at first, warning it would cut profits. Daniel simply said, "Then we'll earn less money and more respect." "That's a trade I'll take any day." The board couldn't argue. The profits, ironically, had already risen. Still, there were challenges. Some employees from the old regime resisted the changes, preferring the fear-based hierarchy that gave them power. Daniel handled it patiently but firmly. "If you can't lead with respect, you can't lead here," he told one senior supervisor. Gradually, the message sank in. The new Grandcrest was about people first. Daniel often walked through the halls late at night, greeting the cleaning crews, thanking them personally. One evening, he ran into Clara again as she was finishing a shift. She laughed, saying, "Feels strange to see the boss checking the lights." Daniel chuckled. A good boss should always see the lights his people work under. When the next annual company event arrived, Daniel invited every employee, from janitors to chefs, to the same ballroom where he had once fired the corrupt managers. He stood at the podium, no cameras this time, just sincerity. "You rebuilt this place," he said. "I may have started Grandcrest, but you gave it life again." The crowd erupted in applause. Some cried openly. Clara stood in the front row, her eyes shining with pride. Daniel felt something deeper than success. It was redemption. The humiliation he once faced had become the catalyst for change, not vengeance. He looked around the room and thought, "This is the true luxury, respect." Later that night, after the celebration ended, Daniel walked alone through the quiet lobby. The chandeliers glimmered softly above, reflecting on the polished marble. He remembered the first day he had entered disguised as Dave, the humiliation, the anger, the heartbreak. And yet, if it hadn't happened, he might never have seen the truth. Sometimes he realized the most painful experiences reveal the deepest lessons. As he stood there, Clara approached him and said, "Sir, I think everyone's proud to work here again." Daniel smiled warmly. "Then my job is finally done." When the story of his undercover journey aired in full, millions tuned in. People around the world sent letters thanking him for showing that empathy could rebuild even the most broken systems. Other companies began adopting similar reforms, citing Grand Crest as inspiration. Daniel never sought fame, but his authenticity resonated beyond the screen. In interviews, he said, "You can't fake compassion. You have to live it." The Grand Crest story became a symbol of redemption, a reminder that even in the world of luxury and wealth, humility still mattered most. In the weeks following the broadcast, Grand Crest's public image soared to unprecedented heights. Guests from around the world began booking stays, not just for the opulence, but to experience what they called the heart of hospitality. Many wrote personal notes to Daniel, thanking him for proving that kindness could coexist with success. The staff, once fearful and silent, now spoke proudly about their workplace. There was laughter in the halls, teamwork in the kitchens, and genuine care in every corner. Daniel often stood at the edge of the lobby, watching it all unfold, remembering how cold this same place had once felt. Now warmth seemed to flow naturally from the people who made it come alive. It was no longer a hotel, it was a home, and it was all born from one week of humiliation that had reshaped everything. One morning, while reviewing financial reports, Daniel received a handwritten letter. It was from Gregory, the former supervisor he had fired. The letter was unexpectedly humble. Gregory admitted that being exposed had shattered his ego, but ultimately changed him. He wrote that he now volunteered at a local shelter, helping others find work and confidence. "You were right," the letter read. "I didn't have to know who someone was to treat them with respect. I just had to choose to be decent." Daniel read those words several times, feeling an unexpected sense of peace. Redemption wasn't just his, it belonged to everyone willing to learn. He placed the letter in his desk drawer, not as a reminder of shame, but of transformation. A few days later, Clara entered his office with a nervous smile. She'd been working tirelessly to train new hires, ensuring the culture of empathy continued to grow. "Sir," she said softly, "we've had record guest reviews this month. People are saying they can feel the difference." Daniel leaned back, smiling. "That's the best compliment we could get." Clara hesitated for a moment, then added, "I wanted to thank you for believing in me when no one else did." He looked at her warmly. "You believed in yourself first. I just gave you a chance to show it." She laughed, embarrassed but grateful. As she left, Daniel realized she represented everything Grand Crest had become, strength born from humility. As time went on, other luxury brands tried to replicate Grand Crest's transformation, but few could capture its sincerity. Daniel was invited to speak at business conferences around the world. In one memorable speech, he told an audience of CEOs, "You can buy marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and gold-plated cutlery. But if your people are miserable, your brand is hollow. The truest form of luxury is respect." His words earned standing ovations, and even skeptics found themselves questioning their own methods. Grand Crest's story wasn't just about a hotel anymore. It was a movement reminding leaders that empathy wasn't weakness, but strength. Months later, Daniel returned to the staff dorms where he had stayed undercover. The small, plain room still smelled faintly of cleaning supplies and detergent. He sat on the edge of the narrow bed, remembering how it felt to be dismissed and insulted. He realized that those painful days had given him perspective that millions of dollars never could. He left an envelope on the table with a note that read, "Never forget where change begins. It starts in rooms like this." As he locked the door behind him, he smiled to himself. The man who had once been humiliated here was now prouder of this small space than any luxury suite in the building. In a private board meeting later that year, Daniel announced a new initiative called the Human Promise. It required all future Grand Crest leaders to complete a mandatory empathy immersion, spending a week doing the same jobs as their lowest paid employees. Before assuming management roles, the boardroom fell silent at first, then erupted in applause. One director said, "You're rewriting what leadership means." Daniel nodded. "No, we're just remembering what it should have meant all along." Within months, the program became an industry benchmark, proving that understanding people at every level wasn't idealism. It was smart business.